Good morning, everyone. I came across this video the other day. Mr. Quiggin tweeted this out yesterday, and I watched it last night, and then I watched it again this morning, and it's very interesting. It's Mr. Scheer in his own words, and he talks about Islamophobia, and well, we're going to watch this, and I'm going to kind of interject in between one word of recommendation for the next video, if there is a next video, and I think there is. Less foreboding music. I like to hear the vocals way louder and the music way lower. Like, have it if you want it, but it doesn't need to be there. The foreboding music takes away from it for me personally. Okay, but Tom Quiggin is a former RCMP officer and a CSIS agent, and he is a counter-terrorist. He's a court-recognized counter-terrorist expert, okay? So he knows what he's talking about as far as I understand it. As far as I understand it, that means he's experienced. He's long in the tooth, and the court, which means our legal system, recognizes that too. So I don't know of better qualifications. This is interesting because it's Andrew Scheer in his own words, and I'm going to try and give you the highlights, but this whole video is worth watching probably twice. Okay, so I've watched it more than that, and I'm still kind of picking things up. There are sentences that are kind of lagged and left, and Andrew Scheer has agreed already, or he's in the process of agreeing, and there's all sorts of stuff. But I want to point it all out because it's interesting, right? This is interesting. This is a very interesting video. Here we go. First question is on Islamophobia, and there are three questions, but he asks one, and then the second and third question are broken up. But we hear him ask those other questions, and then Andrew Scheer directly answers them after he's asked them in the frame. So the first cut is a little weird, but it's obviously the same guy. Like, the camera's just been moved and put down on a tripod. So anyway, that's the first weird cut, but other than that, it's pretty straightforward. Here we go.
I really wanted to address the elephant in the room, Islamophobia. There was some chatter about that prior to your coming. And three quick questions. Would you openly and categorically reject fear-mongering of Muslims in Canada? And I'm not going to use the word Islamophobia because that's open to interpretation. So I'm saying fear-mongering and hate-mongering of Muslims in Canada.
So the first question, yes, absolutely. We denounce all fear-mongering. And those that are targeted against the Muslim faith and those who practice it are completely unacceptable and have no place in Canada. So I have said that publicly. I've said that in the House of Commons. I've said that in my speeches. It is something that perhaps I need to say more, because there certainly is this misconception, and I think some of this, and I'll speak to this in a moment, some of it is my political opponents trying to score cheap political points off of issues of the day that happened. Second.
Okay, so that was, do you reject fear-mongering and hate-mongering of Muslims? And he says, uncategorically, yes, I've said so in the House of Commons. And they say, you should be more public about that. And he says, oh, I've heard that before. I should be more public about that. And there's another question, but I'm going to get to a more important one. Hold on. Okay, in this part of the clip, he says, disassociate yourself from nationalist groups. Like, what's your disassociation here? Are you gonna distance yourself? And Scheer's nodding right away. He's already nodding. He's agreeing. And as he starts to speak, the imam, who was shown at the beginning, it's the same imam, same questioner, says groups like the Yellow Jackets, Faith Goldy. And so that's why there's an image of the Yellow Jackets and Faith Goldie. I don't know if Faith Goldie's on there, but they talk about Faith Goldie specifically, but the Yellow Jackets are flashed upon the screen. So I just want you to notice that, because on my first listen, I didn't catch it. So it's important to notice, I think. So here we go. Scheer's emphatically agreeing. And then, anyway, I just want to note it because it's notable. Okay.
Well, the third about disassociation from nationalist groups.
Yes, yeah, and this is the part that I'm glad you asked that, because this is
the
something.
Yellow Jackets and the Faith Goldie.
No, exactly, and this is something the Liberals are definitely trying.
See, and after he hears Faith Goldie, Yellow Jackets, he says, yeah, exactly. So I just, right, like, it's not like he backs away from the agreement either. So I just want to make sure you're with me on this, right? He knows who they're talking about, and this is where he goes with it. And I think that's interesting, right? He is emphatically distancing himself from the Yellow Jackets, and which is the French Yellow Jackets just finished 36 straight acts protesting Mr. Macron, who is trying to make them terrorists, trying to denote them as terrorists. So that's, I mean, another interesting thing to note. Anyway, Scheer distances himself from that.
Trying to make very weak links. I've always, a friend of mine back in Saskatchewan has always told me that you won an argument with a Liberal when they start accusing you of things like this. You know, when they start hurling those personal insults and drawing those links because they have nothing else to argue with.
Oh man, Mr. Scheer, do you know how many people who I've asked for some kind of, give me a reason to vote for you, and then they call me names for like half an hour? It's quite funny, actually, because the Canadian Discord has degenerated into, if you don't support me or whatever, then you are a racist, idiot, Nazi, whatever insult they can sling at you. And even if you come back reasonable and ask them, hey, could we talk about policy? What's his number? Or could we talk about temporary foreign workers? Or could we talk about anything, any little difference of your platform versus Mr. Bernier's platform? Nazi. It's unbelievable. It is unbelievable. So you say that you always know when you've won an argument with a Liberal when they start hurling those personal insults. And I always know when I'm speaking to a Conservative when they start on the personal insults instead of focusing on the hard policy. Let's have hard policy discussions again, guys. That's what I'm interested in. Like, really. And I just thought that was really funny. Like, I thought it was very funny, that little anecdote, because if you've had a walk around Twitter, look at the comments. Look at the questions and the discord between People's Party and Conservatives. The Conservatives aren't the ones having long, involved discussions on policy. They're the ones slinging ridiculous insults, calling names, and, well, it's something to pay attention to. Mr. Scheer thinks you know you've won, or I guess you know you've lost when you start slinging the insults, eh?
So we had an event on Parliament Hill called the United We Will Conference. It was organized by people who have been out of work in Alberta, who have lost their jobs in the energy sector, and they were protesting the carbon tax and legislation against the pipelines. There were other elements that tried to graft onto it, and the organizers of that event said, absolutely, you're not welcome. They were told that this was an energy sector. Faith Goldie was on the street after I spoke and got up and said something. It was not sanctioned as part of the event, but it was just enough for the Liberals to start making completely baseless attacks on me. It's completely unfair, and it's actually, I find it very disgusting that they would use the very real elements in our society that need to be pushed out of mainstream Canadian conversation. That we need to.
So he just said, I find it disgusting that they would use the very real elements in our society that need to be pushed out of the mainstream Canadian conversation in our society. And I think that's a strange thing to believe. I think that not pushing people out of the conversation, let's include them in the conversation. What do you think? What are the benefits and drawbacks of what you think? Let's put that idea against other ideas, because silencing part of the conversation isn't how you get to a better understanding of where the country should go. Saying, we did a focus group and 70% decided this, so that's what we're going to do. 60% decided this, so that's what we're going to do, and so on and so forth. And there's no conversation. There's no conversation to be had. That's the only thing we're going to do. That's it. And in this situation, I mean, it's quite interesting how it's playing out, right? Free speech is now being silenced in order to push through what they're telling us the majority want. Despite, it seems, the majority don't actually want that. So that's interesting. And in the case of immigration, only 6%, and this is borne out in the data, only 6% want an increase, and still the Liberal government is pushing ahead as if it were politically a positive thing to do, increase immigration, which it's not. We don't have the infrastructure. It's unbelievable, right? So this is interesting that Mr. Scheer is saying, yes, there are elements in our society that we don't want having any part in the conversation. And I would say, let's include them. Let's talk about their ideas, and let's have a really robust conversation and prove to them why it's wrong, and not silence them at all. Say, remember that conversation we had? We all decided that our way is better, rather than, you can't talk about this, rather than tape that guy's mouth up. If he says anything, well, you know what to do, right? Like, it's unbelievable. It's unbelievable that we can have leaders who think that this is the way to better understanding, because I don't think that it is. I don't think that it is. I think that it's a way to, we saw what communism in the USSR, and we can see where communism leads. We have the 20th century. We don't need to have speech silenced with party over everything else. It's just so off-putting to me. Okay, I'll cue up the next clip. I'll leave Mr. Scheer there. The last question is talking about when we heard from Mr. Harper, Islamicism, and barbaric cultural practices. That's what drove the Muslims to seek out other political parties that would be more tolerant to them, I suppose. And so Mr. Scheer says it's difficult to rebuild trust when it's lost. And I think that's interesting, right? That's an interesting thing. So that starts at 355 or so. That's the question. Here's the second story for today. CBC is reporting it's a crime scene. RCMP says squeamish sea-to-sky gondola cable deliberately cut. RCMP say they believe someone deliberately cut the cable of the sea-to-sky gondola located along Highway 99 in Squeamish, BC, felling 2-kilometer cable route early Saturday morning. The gondola, which wasn't operating at the time, normally carries up to 240 passengers at a time on its 30 cars. The trip from the base to the summit, 885 meters above sea level, lasts approximately 10 minutes and gives visitors views over Howe Sound. It's a major tourist destination in BC. We believe the cables were cut, and this was a deliberate act of vandalism, said Inspector Kara Triance with Squeamish RCMP. At this time, it's a crime scene. Almost all of the 30 gondola cars attached to the cable crashed to the ground at 4 a.m., according to staff working overnight. No injuries have been reported as a result of the incident. It's just an incredibly unusual thing to happen, said Kirby Brown, Sea-to-Sky's general manager. We just did our maintenance on the line very recently, and it was a big, thick, beautiful, healthy rope. Loud banging, metal scraping. Hikers camping in the area say they were woken by loud banging and sounds of metal scraping. The cable is 55 millimeters in diameter and is made of 6 strands. It regularly transports several tons with the gondola cars when the gondola cars are loaded and is made to withstand most weather events, says Brown. Triance said RCMP investigators are working with multiple investigators on the ground, including WorkSafe BC and Technical Safety BC, an independent organization that oversees heavy equipment in the province. The experts know the difference between a compromised cable and something that would be cut deliberately, Triance said. She said in order to access the cable, the perpetrator could have hiked the trail underneath the gondola and climbed up one of the maintenance poles on the route, which have ladders attached. They put themselves in extreme jeopardy, not only the nature of the action of climbing up the pole and being in that position, but also the velocity at which the cable would unravel at that point, she said. As for the damage, Trion said this act has cost over $1 million in property damage, not to mention the lost revenue. If there were people on board the gondola, she says the results could have been catastrophic. BC Park says it has closed 3 trails directly under the gondola that were affected by the crash. The trails closed are the Sea to Summit Trail, the Sharon Falls Connector Trail, and the Upper Shannon Falls Trail. RCMP officers are canvassing a large geographic area for their investigation. The trails in the area may have been used to access the gondola line, said Triance. We know that there were people that hiked to the top of the Stamus Chief Mountain this morning, and we are asking that anybody in the area that did hike the trails to come speak to police. We're looking for witnesses. Brown said the cable and cars can be fixed or replaced, but the company's main priority is the investigation. We've got a lot of hours ahead of us, really coming to grips with what occurred before we can focus on the fix. The gondola's normal operating hours are from 9:30 a.m. to 8 p.m. on Saturday, and 9:30 a.m. to 6 p.m. from Sunday to Wednesday. But obviously it's closed right now because it's not attached. So that's pretty concerning, very concerning. And the last one is, this is from the UK, and this is drag queen at a library reading stories to children and teaching them how to twerk. I'm not going to show this video. I couldn't watch the video. I just kind of skipped through it. But it's really disturbing that that's the track. Why does adult entertainment, why do people find it acceptable that adult entertainment be served to children on this platter? I don't think that it's acceptable. I don't think that it's a good idea. I think it's a very bad idea. So it's interesting to note what's happening, right? Thanks for watching, everybody. Check out the peoplespartyofcanada.ca and have a wonderful, wonderful day.